The book we're going over is Beyond Addiction, How Science and Kindness Help People Change. This is a really well-recognized book by many experts in the field, and it's based on research, and that's why it's such an important book, and that's why I really feel it's important for us to go over. The way the book is outlined is it starts with an introduction and four main sections. So the introduction is what we'll go over today. Part one is what to know. What is addiction? What is motivation? How do people change? A basic framework about what the science shows. And then number two is how to cope. So damage control, what your limits are. Part three is how to help. This is where most people focus on. This is the largest section of the book as well. It has the most chapters. And this is setting goals, how to communicate, treatment options, what to do during treatment. And then part four is live your life. Each part has different sections. And what we're going to do is talk about the introduction. So the introduction is called Hope in Hell. And the great part about this book is it starts with the first subsection on page 4, the science of change. We've gone over this in a previous class. It was one of the first couple classes that we went over where we went over how family interventions are effective. And so I won't go over that right now, but they outline it here, and they talk about similar data, similar numbers, and how family interventions and family having a role in this is incredibly helpful. Okay, now here's something that it says under this subsection, which is really profound. Most people equate treatment with intensive residential rehab and believe rehab is the starting point of all change. So when we think of treatment, oftentimes that's what we're thinking is the goal. If we can just get our loved one into treatment, everything will fall into place. And family members and friends who have this idea, this is later in the paragraph, are left with few options other than to stand by and watch things get worse until that person goes into rehab. But what this goes on to talk about is that this is the important part. Research actually has shown that family members can play a role in change. So there's more than simply just waiting and hoping. There's a lot that we can do in terms of learning, thinking, and doing. And then it goes on to talk about the data. Now the next subsection on page 8 talks about what the book offers. And then it talks about questions you may have. So the first question they anticipate, or based on their experience that comes up, is, can I really help if they don't want to change? And that's a natural question, and they go into resolving that question, and I'll go into that in a little bit. The second question is, and I want to go over these questions because I want to show that it's really normal to have these questions, and we're not alone in having these questions. And although it might seem new and mysterious, this is a well-charted path that other people are on. Some of them are many steps ahead, and we can follow in their footsteps. So the second question is, what if I feel as though I've already tried everything? Now this is a good one because oftentimes we get 2 emails or 2 questions or 2 intros, which is, I don't know what to do, I'm new at this, or number 2, I've been doing this for a long time and I've tried everything. And so both of those unfortunately put us in a position that's not empowering. It puts us in a position where we're taking our power and putting it on other things. So I don't know what to do. That's a good place to start. It's a place of humility. It's a place that leaves us open to gathering information to help change. If it's not followed up with actually action and learning and doing and changing, then it can be really harmful. And then the second one, where I've tried everything, that takes away from all the other things that could have been tried. And I'm going to get back to this in just a moment, but I want to highlight the questions. So the third question is, what about me? How can I begin to feel better? Because many of us are affected with this what they say beautifully. Chronic worrying that affects physical and mental health. It can disrupt your sleep, interfere with your concentration, and play havoc with your moods. This is page 10. Okay, now finally, the last question is, what can I do right now? Not like, I don't want to read a 500-page book and then figure out what I need to do then. I don't want to go through a month-long family program at a rehab and then what do I do then? I don't want to listen to like the same lectures over and over again in this group and then figure out that there's something that's down the road that can be done. So then it goes into 10 steps. And this is what I want to go over, or 10 points, and then we'll wrap up. So finally, what can I do now? This is what they say. This is important. Thinking is doing, or learning is doing. How you think about a problem is the first step to a solution and the first thing that you can change. To help you do this, we've distilled the 10 most revolutionary discoveries by scientists in our field over the past 40 years. 10 evidence-based reasons to have hope. And by the way, in my field, this is a well-respected book, and for many reasons. Okay, so point number 1 is you can help. The research is clear on this. Involving family and friends significantly increases the odds of improvement. So that's point number 1. Be wary of ideas where people are selling hope. They're selling hope in some sort of quick fix sort of scheme. I don't think people intentionally do that, but it occurs. And sometimes we interpret things as quick fix schemes. So for example, addiction has many components. It has spiritual components, it has medical components, it has psychological components, it has social components. And so sometimes we can interpret just focusing on one of these components and fixing one of these components as the thing that's going to fix everything. So it's important to recognize that hope is important, but addressing all these components and using a strategy, having some movement towards using a strategy is incredibly important, because be wary of people just kind of selling hope. And hope is good, but hope coupled with work, with hard work. And that's the important thing. Not hope coupled with a quick fix. And anybody trying to sell a quick fix, be careful of that. Number 2, helping yourself helps. This is a really important point. You don't have to choose between your self-preservation and theirs. This is what it says in the first sentence. I'm going to say it again because it's so well said. Number 2, helping yourself helps. You don't have to choose between your self-preservation and theirs. You can do all the work you need to help them while simultaneously taking care of yourself. And that's important, because if you have this chronic worry that completely drains you, we're useless. We're driving on empty. You know, it's like we have nothing left within us. So that's really important. So when you help yourself, you help your loved one. I like to think of this. This is how I like to think of it for myself. I'm like a racehorse. And the more I train and take care of myself and strengthen myself, the more I can do better at the game. Number 3, your loved one isn't crazy. People don't use substances because they're crazy. People don't use substances because they're bad people. People use substances because they get something they need out of it, or they like out of it. So by understanding, not condoning why people do what they do, gives us a much better chance of helping. Now here's a really good point. I'm on the 3rd point on page 12. I'm just going to read it verbatim. Research has shown that the more you criticize someone, presumably in the hopes of getting through to them, the more defensive they'll become, which is often taken for denial. This book offers strategies based on respect and optimism and are proven to lower defenses and get you on the same side, working together against the problem. So that's great. Okay, now point number 4. This is perhaps my favorite point out of all 10. So, and it's a short point. It's on page 13. It's only half the page here. The world isn't black and white. Traditional notions of addiction give you 2 and only 2 options oftentimes. In reality, it's probably our perception of it. People are said to be addicts or not. Addicts are said to be ready to change or not. Just 2 options, black or white. They're either recovering or they're in denial. They're with the program or not. Treatment is rehab or nothing. It's success or failure, healthy or sick, clean or dirty, abstinent or relapsing. And for friends and family, it's either you're intervening or enabling. The good news is it's not true. And we're probably part of the problem because of how we have been framing or introducing enabling. But there's so much more to this. It's on a spectrum, and there's so much more to click into here. So the last sentence is, black and white thinking is not just a philosophical problem, it's a barrier to change. The 5th point is, labels do more harm than good. So in the 3rd paragraph they mentioned, we recommend you to put aside the question of whether someone is an addict or an alcoholic, and just focus essentially, I'm paraphrasing now, just focus essentially on trying to solve the problem. What matters is what matters to you and to them. What effect is the substance use having in their life and in yours? What will motivate them to change? So focusing on the solution as opposed to the problem. Okay, and number 6. I'm going to spend a little time on number 6, and then we will go breeze through the other 4. Okay, number 6, different people need different options. So this is a good section for somebody who says, I've tried everything. What do I do next? And I'm just going to read the first paragraph. Inpatient, outpatient, group therapy, individual therapy, outpatient once a week, twice a week, every day. There's anti-craving medications, medications for withdrawal, medications for mood symptoms, attention deficit, extended care facilities. There's sober companion self-help groups, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's 90 meetings in 90 days, talking with the spiritual guide, starting exercise. There are many different types of therapeutic options. Some are more supported by evidence than others. Some are more appropriate for some people's backgrounds but the most important thing to keep in mind is no one size fits all. Having a choice among treatment plans and plans for change in general predict positive outcomes. Giving people options helps them get invested in the resulting plan. So backing people into a corner and telling them that they should do the rehab or else approach might get them into, but things can be more complicated than that. So that's so important because I'm going to just skip to bullet point number 10 because I think it really feeds into number 10 really well. Is that number 10 is life is a series of experiments. This is the last bullet point. Life is a series of experiments. Try thinking like a scientist. This is one of the things I commonly say to people. It's a process of trial and error. And if you haven't found success, that just means we need to add one of those many options, or maybe we just haven't mastered the skills yet. And we continue to work. Persistence is key. So they say, try thinking like a scientist. This doesn't mean having all the answers or being overly analytical. Try to notice what works and what doesn't and adjust your strategies accordingly. Be yourself, but be as willing to change as you want your loved one to be. And try not to take things personally. Behavior is the issue here, not character. Because this is a maladaptive neurologic process that results in behavior maladaptations. Many of our loved ones are amazing people in terms of their character prior to their substance use, while they're battling the substance use, and it becomes even more manifest after they overcome their substance use. Okay, so there's other bullet points. We didn't go over 7, 8, and 9, but feel free to read them and go over them. Number 7 is treatment isn't the be-all and end-all. Number 8 is ambivalence is normal. I don't want to, but I also do want to. Number 9 is people can be helped at any time. So this is something that's really, really a beautiful line under bullet point 9. It says in the second paragraph, we can't stress this enough. What looks like unwillingness to change is often a defense reaction. People with substance problems respond with significantly less resistance to kindness and respectful treatment, as do the rest of us. Now here's the point. Here's the $1 million point. So don't wait for your loved one to hit bottom. It can be dangerous. And problems are more treatable the sooner they are caught. And don't lose hope in the face of resistance from your loved ones. Resistance is subject to change. And okay, now one of the final sections is how to use this book. So this is a book that you can skip around depending on what you feel is more helpful to you. So we'll be trying to go through it in some sort of a linear fashion, but remember what you read and what you learn. And if you go through a section and you want to skip ahead because it's pertinent to what you're going through, then that's the best way to use this book. So if you had some fights recently, then you want to go to the positive communication chapter, then great. And then the book ends with words of encouragement. And then it also ends with a list of things you can change. So it has like really potent ideas that will infect your thinking in terms of how you manage this. So with that, we'll move into the skills portion and go from there. Okay, there's one last point I had to. This was really the $1 million one. I mixed it up, and I really want to share it. This is page 13, under bullet point 4. The world isn't black and white. While you might fantasize about a lever you can pull that will send your loved one straight to rehab, and they will come back cured, that's black and white thinking too. The truth is that people are more likely to make big changes and continue with those changes if they are given time and help to choose among reasonable alternatives. Okay, we're going to go into the skills portion and pull up the PowerPoint.